So in this module, we're going to jump right into working with SPSS to analyze data. Now, critically, we're not just going to be looking at data analysis for the sake of data analysis, but rather we're going to have an emphasis on how do you use data to make specific business decisions, and of course those are decisions in a marketing context. We're going to cover quite a bit in this particular set of videos, including exploring data, t-tests, ANOVA, and crosstabs. So let's jump right into it. So when we open up SPSS, we come to what looks like a blank Excel worksheet. And roughly this is where our data are going to be stored. It's worth pointing out that up top over here, it says IBM SPSS Statistics Data Editor. This is different from another window which we're often going to use, which is the Statistics Viewer. So this is where all of our output is going to go when we actually run analyses. For now, both of these are blank because we haven't loaded any data, but let's go ahead and do that. You would navigate to the folder that you need to be working with, and you'd find the file that you need, which is autoonline.sav in this case. And by the way, .sav is the SPSS file extension for data files. And we're going to go ahead and open that up. So now what we see is a fairly populated, again, for lack of a better term, spreadsheet. And one thing, again, I want you to notice towards the bottom here, and this is going to be a little bit different if you're using a PC, but it's more or less the same. We've got the data view, and we've got the variable view. The big difference between something like SPSS and Excel is this is not a spreadsheet software. What this is a software for running data analysis that happens to be formatted similarly to the way a spreadsheet would. The big difference is if we pop into variable view, what we see here are the names of the different variables and their associated information. One of the things that's really nice is that instead of just the variable names like we would have in Excel, you could put things like the label. So what is this question about? So for instance, here's a question, visits. So about how many times you bought your automobile did you visit the Auto Online website? And so people respond to that question, and rather than just knowing that it's about visits, we have the label that accompanies it. The same can be true for scale questions. So here's one about hassle. I don't like to hassle with car salesmen. And under values, we actually know what all of the values correspond. We want the numerals, we want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 so that we can run the statistical analyses. But when we run our analysis, instead of just saying it's a 3, the output will say it's neutral, which is a far easier thing for us to interpret. Now, of course, you as the person have to populate all of this information, but doing so is incredibly useful. Immediately after you run a survey, you probably remember more or less everything that's involved. But I assure you, when you have to come back to it 3-6 months later, you'll have no recollection about what the questions were, what the different values for the scale responses were, and so on. And so doing this population task is actually tremendously useful. Before we move forward, there's one small tip I want to make. And under the edit options, I think it might be preferences in Windows, there's an option to set, instead of display labels, display names. Just trust me for a second and I'll explain why this is useful later on. You want to switch this to display names. That's it for this video, and at this point what I'd like you to do is actually just play around a bit. There's really nothing that you can do wrong. If you mess up your data file, just close it and open it afresh. I want you to see if you can get a feel for some of the different analysis you can do, and almost all the analyses that you can do are under the Analyze menu. So again, just have fun, play around with it a little bit, and in the next video we'll start digging into specific tools that you can use to start with your data analysis.